Thanks for starting your week with us. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Let's get started with a glimpse of today's highlights. Not only are Koreans struggling with high unemployment, they're also suffering from a continued rise in prices, leading to low consumer confidence. The Bank of Korea starts its trial run involving thousands of retailers in a bid to make Korea a coinless society. These stories and more coming right up. Despite a recovery in Korea's exports, consumer spending has been cited as a factor that could hinder growth for this year. In fact, Koreans are confronting unfavorable conditions caused by an increase in inflation and a growing jobless rate. Our Kim Min-ji starts us off.
Times are getting tougher for Koreans due to a rise in consumer prices and growing unemployment. According to Statistics Korea, the so-called misery index came to 6.4 in the first quarter, the highest since 2012. The index is a combination of the jobless rate and the inflation rate and aims to measure the amount of economic difficulty felt by the public. The figure soared to 8.6 during the wake of the global financial crisis in 2008 and had since been on a downward trend due to weak inflation. But the index was back up this year due to a spike in food prices amid the country's worst bird flu outbreak ever and a pickup in global oil prices. The unemployment rate also hit a 7-year high of 4.3% in the first quarter. This comes on the back of corporate restructuring in the shipping and shipbuilding industry, as well as weak job growth among young people. As a result, Korea's consumer confidence is low and ranks near bottom among OECD member countries. The index for Korea came to slightly above 99 in March, up for 2 straight months, but still below the OECD average of 100.56. The figure also puts Korea 30th among 32 member nations, with only Turkey and Greece ranked lower. A rating above 100 means consumers are optimistic about the economic situation ahead, while a rating below 100 reflects pessimism. The weak figure has been attributed to the political turmoil that has rattled the country since last year, as well as the government's ongoing corporate restructuring program. On top of that, weak income growth and a lack of measures to encourage spending have been cited as reasons for weak consumer confidence. Korea's nominal monthly household income grew 0.6% last year, the slowest rate of growth since 2003. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
And dream jobs are proving to be elusive for many job seekers and especially those with college degrees. A big mismatch between desired and available jobs is said to be one of the lead causes. Our Lee Joo-young has more.
The Korean economy has been showing some signs of recovery when it comes to exports and investment, but in terms of employment, things are still down the pit. According to Statistics Korea, the number of unemployed people with a bachelor's degree hit 543,000 in the first 3 months of this year, marking the first time that quarterly figures have topped the 500,000 mark. This is up about 9% from the same time last year. In fact, out of the total number of jobless Koreans in the January to March period, nearly half were those with college degrees. Experts say the fundamental reason is due to a mismatch in the labor market, with more highly educated Koreans striving to work at large companies or at public institutions. Rather than working for smaller firms or settling with irregular jobs, market watchers say the vast majority of job seekers are committed to finding quality jobs that offer stability and high wages, even if they have to wait.
While it's important to increase the number of jobs, it's also critical to maintain a certain level of quality employment. Instead of the government trying to be responsible for everything, it should focus on encouraging investment from the private sector.
With the country's youth unemployment rate reaching roughly 11% last month, far higher than the country's total jobless rate of about 4.2%, creating quality jobs has arguably become one of the biggest tasks that the next government needs to tackle. Lee Joo-young, Business Daily.
Seoul's top economic policymaker says the domestic economy could expand more than the government's forecast of 2.6% this year. Finance Minister Yoo Il-ho, who's in Washington for the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting, said the country's faster than expected growth pace will depend on what kind of policies the U.S. lays out. Minister Yoo forecasts that while it's unlikely that Korea will be named a currency manipulator in the U.S. Treasury Department's next Forex report in October, the free trade deal with the U.S. could be renegotiated. He also played down growing speculation over a supplementary budget, saying there's no need for it when first quarter figures are expected to be better than expected. Despite the uncertainty, the finance minister has cited the Korean economy is sailing smoothly, at least for now, thanks to improving global demand. The country saw its outbound shipments rise at the fastest pace among 10 major exporting nations in the first 2 months of this year. Data from the World Trade Organization shows that Korea's exports shot up over 15% in January to February period from a year earlier to $83.5 billion. This is sharply higher than the average 9% rise of all 71 nations surveyed and the 4% rise seen in China, the world's largest exporter. The U.S. has initiated more than 24 probes into import regulations so far this year. According to Korea International Trade Association, 28 anti-dumping and countervailing investigations have been launched in the January to April period. The number of probes is seen as significant considering there were 53 for the whole of last year. As of now, Korean producers would potentially be affected by the anti-dumping investigation into exports of alloy steel wire rods. Over the years, although figures have fluctuated, the number of investigations launched by Washington has more or less been on an upward trend. It initiated 57 probes in 2013, 37 in 2014, and 64 in 2015. China has the biggest number of anti-dumping and countervailing duties slapped on its products by the U.S., with 153 cases, followed by India, which has 32, and Korea, 24 cases. We're still seeing mixed movements within the Korean equity market. After rising by a big margin, the Kospi lost steam in the late hours of this week's first session. And we're now joined by our markets contributor, Jin-seok, to talk about overall stock market performance and upcoming market events. Hello, Jin-seok.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so how did the Korean stock market close on the first day of the week?
The Kospi market rose slightly by 0.4% to close at 2173.74, while the Kosdaq sank by 1.3% to close at 626. As the first round of the presidential election in France avoided the worst scenario, the Kospi rose to as high as 2177 in early hours. Both foreigners and institutions bought shares to lift the index at that point. However, as institutional investors shifted their position to unload shares on the market, the Kospi erased early gains in the afternoon. Retail investors who also sold massive amounts of shares dragged down the Kospi index as well. The Kosdaq market underperformed the Kospi, falling below 630 as both foreigners and institutions unloaded shares during the session. Share prices of Anleb, an online security firm founded by An Cheol-soo, one of the leading candidates in the presidential election, plummeted by 13% as support for An has recently dropped following televised debates. The company's share prices have fallen sharply by 30% over the past month.
Now, although the Korean market didn't really get a big boost from the results of the French election, global asset markets reacted to the event quite positively, right?
That's right. Global financial markets had concerns over the election because there was a risk of Marine Le Pen's far-right party Front National and far-left candidate Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who said he will renegotiate France's relationship with the European Union, advancing to the final round on May 7. But after the election, the euro jumped sharply against other global currencies as centrist former economy minister Emmanuel Macron was in the lead, followed by Le Pen. The euro rose to its highest level against the dollar since November and against the Japanese yen, spiking as high as 120.5 in early trading in Asia, up 3.4% market watch said. as Macron is seen as more likely to be elected as the next president, concerns over the so-called Frexit are now mitigated. However, investors can't yet rule out the possibility of Le Pen winning the final round.
So now that the first round of the French election is over, the domestic market is expected to shift its focus back on the earnings season again.
Exactly. According to Hana Investment, a lot of companies will report their quarterly results this week. The list includes SK Hynix on the 25th, Samsung C&T, SK Telecom, LG Display, LG Innotek, Hyundai Motors, and Samsung Electromechanics on the 26th. Samsung Electronics, LG U+, LG Electronics, Samsung SDI, Kia Motors, Hyundai Glovis, and KTNG on the 27th, and KT on the 28th. Therefore, experts say it will be effective for investors to concentrate on sectors and companies that are experiencing an earnings rebound, at least in the near term. Expectations have recently been raised further. Eugene Investments and Securities said Kospi Company's operating income in Q1 will surpass 44.2 trillion Korean won, which is the highest ever.
Now, global tech giants are expected to unveil their quarterly earnings results as well. So how are things looking over in the U.S. with that?
The list includes Caterpillar, a manufacturer of construction and mining equipment on 25, and Microsoft, Alphabet, Intel, and Amazon on 27, and ExxonMobil and Chevron on the 28. Market research firm FactSet says with 6% of the companies in the S&P 500 reporting actual results, 76% have beat the mean EPS estimate and 59% have beat the mean sales estimate. The overall picture for this week seems rosy too. The technology sector is expected to record a 13% growth in Q1 profits, while the energy sector is forecast to experience a sharp rebound of 34% in revenue. Therefore, it will be important to see if the companies meet such high expectations.
Now, other than corporate earnings, there are going to be a number of economic indicators, both from home and abroad. And also on the list is the big announcement from the U.S. President Donald Trump.
That's right. The Bank of Korea, or the BOK, will unveil preliminary numbers of the country's Q1 GDP growth on Thursday, and the same data from the U.S. will be reported on Friday local time. Along with housing data on Tuesday, these indicators will give hints on how fast the Korean economy and the U.S. economy are recovering. President Donald Trump said on Friday he will unveil a big announcement about tax reforms on Wednesday to give individuals and businesses a massive tax cut. Trump's promise to roll out business-friendly policies, including tax cuts, has served as a positive catalyst for global equity markets and financial markets as a whole. Therefore, this week's announcement will be closely eyed by investors.
All right, thank you so much for that today.
Thank you.
Korea's investment in China has dropped in recent years, while its investment in the U.S. and Vietnam is on the rise. According to data from the Export-Import Bank of Korea, the country's total foreign direct investment reached an all-time high of $35.2 billion last year. Of that, its investment in China was $3.3 billion, down from $5.7 billion in 2007. The decline was attributed to a slowdown in investment in China, as well as the completion of a Samsung Electronics factory in 2014. In contrast, Korea's investment in the U.S. came to $12.9 billion last year, more than double what it was in 2013. The rise was attributed to mergers and acquisitions by Korean companies seeking advanced technologies. Investment in Vietnam came to $2.3 billion last year, almost doubling during the same period, thanks to steady economic growth and relatively cheap labor. Two major development institutions, the World Bank and the China-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, have agreed to increase cooperation in the areas of knowledge sharing and development financing, among others. During the annual World Bank and IMF spring meetings in Washington, the two organizations signed an MOU and said in a joint statement that they are discussing co-financing more projects for this year and next. The two have already funded several projects together, including financing hydroelectric power generation in Pakistan, rebuilding national slums in Indonesia, and creating a national gas pipeline in Azerbaijan. AIIB President Jean Lecun said that he expects the agreement to deepen relations with the World Bank Group and set up mechanisms for collaboration and information sharing. World Bank President Jim Yong Kim sees the collaborative efforts as essential to make the best use of scarce resources. And also during the spring meetings over the weekend, members of the IMF dropped their pledge to fight protectionism. In a communique released by the International Monetary and Financial Committee, the previous pledge to resist all forms of protectionism was notably absent. The provision, which has appeared in recent years, was last seen as recently as October. Mexican Central Bank Governor Agustin Carstens, the chair of the IMFC, says that rather than dwelling on what it means to fight protectionism, the committee is committed to strengthening the contribution of trade to their economies. The world has seen growing protectionist sentiment in the recent months, fueled by leaders like U.S. President Donald Trump and France's far-right presidential candidate Marine Le Pen. The IMF had recently warned that these protectionist policies could choke growth of the global economy. An experiment to do away with coins entirely has begun. Now, the trial, which involves thousands of retailers, comes just as the Bank of Korea has first proposed in December. Our Eunice Kim shows us how it works.
A convenience store customer picks up a few items and pays with cash.
1,900원입니다. 동전은 여기다 적립해 주세요.
The change is loaded on a public transit card just by tapping it on a card reader. It can also be converted into points onto a mobile payment app. The trial run begins with some 23,000 retailers in Korea, including big supermarket chains E-Mart and Lotte Mart. The Bank of Korea hopes to expand it to the market at large over phases.
Depending on the results, we want to broaden it to pharmacies and traditional markets. We're also exploring ways to deposit directly into bank accounts.
The cost of pushing out coins every year is estimated to reach up to 60 billion won. That's about 53 million US dollars. Of this expense, only about 10% is recovered, with the rest shouldered as a social cost, the loss contributing to the central bank's goal of becoming a coinless society by distributing new payment systems to retailers over the next few years. It's also part of a movement already in motion in Nordic countries like Sweden and Denmark, where buses, street vendors, and even churches anticipate payment via virtual or plastic means, leading the way to completely cashless societies. Also on its way there is China, a country with an active e-commerce scene. Researchers predict the state's primary mode of payment stands to no longer be cash within 5 to 10 years. But as many Koreans still use cash in their day-to-day payments, including the elderly and street vendors, the idea is to begin with coins in steps through the year 2020. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
Despite the slow growth we've seen in the economy in the recent years, one industry that's been thriving here in Korea is the so-called character business. So, what makes them so popular? We take an in-depth look at the latest trends and key drivers behind the market.
This is where Kim Hae-kyung, an office worker in her 30s, lives. The minute you enter her place, you are greeted by one character after another. Her home is full of character merchandise, from dolls to dinnerware. Kim is a huge fan of Tube, a meek, friendly duck, and one of the emoticon characters featured in a widely popular mobile messenger.
I have every kind of tube doll there is. As for other merchandise, I have everything that has tube in it.
Taking a picture of the dolls in different places and posting them on social media has become her favorite pastime. Kim says there are many people who share the same interest as her.
It's something that you can find comfort in. We are living in tough times. Character products not only remind me of my childhood, but also comfort me.
Korea's character market has been mainly driven by smartphones. With smartphone penetration reaching as high as 91%, messaging apps have become a powerful communication tool. Thanks to easy accessibility, emoticon characters used in these apps are enjoying massive popularity. This is a brick-and-mortar character shop run by one of Korea's leading mobile messenger services. Animal emoticon characters displaying different emotions, including angry, sad, and happy, have become incredibly popular with mobile users.
In the past, characters were mostly from animated films, but these are from a mobile messenger, which makes them easily accessible.
Since the launch of character merchandise in 2015, the number of merchandise items has grown to nearly 2,000. The company operates 19 character shops nationwide, and each store welcomes about 8,000 visitors every day. What's interesting is that the main consumer base for character products is 20-somethings and 30-somethings, not children.
The characters are cute and fun, so I like them.
Kidult culture has gone mainstream and social media users have some influence. Our main target is consumers in their 20s and 30s.
Those in their 20s and 30s are people who grew up exposed to pop culture, including cartoons and animations, and who are used to expressing their emotions with emoticons. Experts say the phenomenon is attributable to consumer psychology in a recession where young people, faced with unemployment and other hurdles in life, seek comfort in characters in an escape from the harsh reality.
Frustrated in the real world, consumers are increasingly looking for the fun factor. They are now finding the fun in characters. Compared to the past, we are seeing a lot of young demographics. They are millennials or those born after the 1980s. They have a stronger desire for a fun shopping experience than previous generations.
During tough economic times, consumers also increasingly turn to affordable purchases, like character products instead of buying luxury goods. Last year, the mobile messenger service partnered up with 23 brands, including cosmetic, fashion, and bakery brands to launch 1,500 types of character goods. Some were limited editions, carrying a price tag 30% higher, but they were sold out fast. The messenger service plans to unveil more collaborations with partners from different sectors.
We're collaborating with different brands in diverse categories to bring everyday joy to consumers.
The Korean character market grew from $6.5 billion in 2012 to $9.5 billion last year. Ample growth opportunities are being created both at home and abroad.
The two main drivers are the bad economy and fun-seeking consumer behavior. Those born from 1980 to 1999 form the key consumer base. As they find more purchasing power, the character industry will have huge growth potential.
Korea's character market is experiencing continued growth while comforting people frustrated by years of economic hardship. Market players may need to look for different ways to make the recent boom more than just a passing fad and create characters that can resonate with a global audience.
And that brings us to the end, but we'll be back tomorrow with more of the day's top business stories, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye for now.